Joining us now, a man who just wrote a Sunday feature article on Taysom Hill, Dan Wolken, national college football writer for USA Today. Welcome to BYU Sports Nation, Dan.
Thanks for having me. How are you guys?
Fantastic. In your 4 years of experience, have you ever encountered a college quarterback that could squat 430 pounds, let alone be the guy that can squat the most on his team?
No, I mean, he's a strong dude. Like, he is a physical freak in a number of ways. He's fast. He's tough. He's really strong. And, those front squats, I mean, I do a little bit of lifting, but nothing like that. But I can certainly appreciate, when you're going up there and your center is the strongest guy on the team, and he's posted a number, and the quarterback comes in and says, "All right, well, put 5 more pounds on. I'm going to beat him," and then does it. That's pretty unusual, and it gets those guys fired up, and it just sort of adds to the legend of Taysom Hill, which is, given the fact that he's missed basically half of 2 seasons, it's already pretty big. So we'll see if he can stay healthy and add to it, for 1 more year.
Dan Wolken with us, national college football writer for USA Today.
Dan, you wrote an article that was released on Sunday. Good read. It discussed Taysom Hill's future, both immediate and down the line professionally. What do you think impressed you the most about Taysom Hill?
Well, he's just got a great perspective on a number of things. He's really, really smart. You can tell that just from talking to him. He's got great charisma, and some people are just born like that, where people are naturally drawn to them. And I think that is evident if you spend any time with him. And I thought it was also very impressive just how natural he was in interacting with people who are much older than him, much more experienced than him in terms of the office he was working in. Seemed to be very natural and fit in. And it wasn't about him being the quarterback of the football team. I mean, that's something completely irrelevant to what he's doing as an intern at a venture capital firm. But he was very much at ease, and they were at ease with him and weren't treating him like the quarterback of the BYU football team. So I was just sort of impressed by those dynamics, his intelligence. He's articulate. He understands what he's talking about, and he is, he's not a guy who stays up watching Sports Center, or he's not. He said, if you look at my Twitter feed, it's very little sports. It's Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, all that stuff, technology. So just unusual for a guy his age and who's still in school and who still has potentially an NFL future in front of him. He seems to be very much aware of the end of his time in football, whether that's now or at the end of the BYU season or in a few years down the road, and is preparing for it.
Did he give you any insider trade secrets about what you need to do with your 401k?
No. The company he's working for or that he did work for this summer, I should say, what they specialize in is a little bit different. They invest in early technology startup companies that basically don't have any revenue, so they try to raise money from these venture capital firms, and in exchange for funding, basically the venture capital firm gets a percentage of the profits, or a percentage of ownership in the company, which turns into a big return on investment if it ever goes public or something like that. So there's a lot of failures, but if you get a couple hits, you can make a huge amount of money. So it's a lot about researching these kind of companies and knowing the technology space, and it's interesting, and it'll be interesting to see when he gets into it, whether he goes down that path or maybe goes into an analyst program at a big firm like Goldman Sachs. But a lot of those opportunities are going to be open to him, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed the article that you released on Sunday, and I had a previous discussion with Taysom before you met with him about his options, and he kind of said the same thing to me. He's like, look, I know I've had 2 season-ending injuries. Like, I want to play football, but I need to be smarter than just putting all of my eggs in one basket. And I really like that about him, and it shows his maturity for sure. But speaking of his football prowess, no question, as you mentioned, he's a freak athlete and he can do special things on the field. ESPN rated him the 81st best college football player on their top 100 yesterday. At that number, are you buying or selling Taysom Hill as the 81st best college football player?
Oh, no, he's better than that. But, look, those lists, it's very, very hard to put together a list of best players in college football because, there's so many teams and different positions. And I think when you talk about his importance, quarterbacks often get more credit than they deserve and more blame than they deserve and all that stuff. But he really is the engine of that offense. And I think when he's healthy and playing well, you saw last year the first 4 games of the season, BYU was really rolling, and he was putting up huge numbers. And I think people started to imagine a lot of great things for that team. And then he gets hurt and everything goes south. And so people maybe forget how great he was at that time. But there's no question the platform BYU has with its first 4 games, look, it could go a couple different directions. I mean, you're playing UCLA, you're playing Nebraska, you're playing Michigan, you're playing Boise State early on. You lose those games, then you're going to be irrelevant pretty much the rest of the season. If you win 3 or even 4, you're going to be firmly in the top 25, and probably the schedule gets a little easier from there. And certainly he would have a lot to do with the success if they win those games, and he'll be a guy that people start talking about. So he's a really good player, but there's no question that how BYU does in those first 4 games is going to play into the perception of just how good of a year he's having.
Dan, you mentioned some of the teams that is on this upcoming schedule. There's 3 ranked teams right now that BYU will face in 2015. How many games do you think BYU will win?
I'm terrible at predicting those kind of things. I think that, they're obviously going to be a bowl team, and they are. I think they have a good roster. I think they're very experienced offensively, and they're going to get a bunch of guys back that they didn't have last year off of injury, and certainly it's been sort of a weird thing to watch over the last few years because they've really developed at BYU such a defensive identity, and they've had some pretty special players on that side of the ball, and then all of a sudden, 2 years ago, they go to up-tempo, and all of a sudden it flips a little bit, and they're really good offensively. So I don't know. I mean, it's such a tough schedule that I think predicting any sort of win number is pretty difficult.
Well, okay. I'll make it a little bit easier. Let's focus on just September.
Yeah. Well, I think that Nebraska is a game that they can't win. I think that Michigan is a game they should win. I think that UCLA is going to be tough. I just think playing out there, and UCLA to me is a national championship contender, and so I wouldn't necessarily expect that one. And then you get the Boise game, and that's going to be super interesting. I mean, BYU gets them at home. Boise is going to be a top 25 team in the preseason. I think that's one that if you're going to have the kind of year you want to have, that's one you really need. So there's definitely an opportunity to go 3-1 in September, but it's going to be difficult.
Dan Wolken, national college football writer for USA Today, also covers horse racing. Just wrote an article about Taysom Hill. Hey, we refer to Taysom as the horse, so it's a perfect fit. Now, I do want to ask you this. We have been made aware that the BYU Twitter sphere took some things out of context yesterday. Honestly, I don't even know what it was. I don't know the specifics, but I'm guessing that the real beef is because you mentioned Rice-Eccles Stadium on your Twitter account and the University of Utah.
You know what's funny is, I've probably spent in my entire life less than 20 days in the state of Utah, and I guess because I put that on my USA Today profile, that people in Utah or maybe BYU fans think I have like some connection to the University of Utah
Yep.
or to the state of Utah. I have zero connection. I just happen to think that that's like one of the most beautiful places to watch a college football game. Provo's very nice.
It is.
Provo's very nice too, but I just think that the way that stadium sits in Salt Lake City, kind of up on the hill there, and the way from the press box, the way that mountain view. You kind of get that as you're watching the game. I just happen to think that's pretty awesome. So I don't know if people are offended by that or not, but too bad. BYU Twitter is an interesting place.
Indeed, it is.
I said this on another show this morning. I think the people in the state of Utah are tremendous. They always are very nice. I feel like it's one of the nicest states, just in terms of how people act and to strangers and all that stuff. And then on Twitter, I guess because of the anonymity, BYU fans are among the most vicious out there. So I don't know what to make of that juxtaposition, but it's certainly something I noticed.
Oh, Dan, you're a trooper, man. We appreciate the time today, the insight into Taysom, and again for the great read you put out on USA Today. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.